Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Bravo Bedside Banter. My name is Meredith Langfritz. I am a certified sex coach, and I've also been in the clinical side of sexual wellness for a little over 7 years now. And I have had a love for reality TV since I can remember, going way back to the Forbes uh, on E, as well as Girls Next Door. I was watching that as a young one. So, and I'm joined here with my co-host Rachel.
Hey everyone, I'm Rachel Overval. I am a somatic sex coach. I have certifications from the Kinsey Institute and the Somatic Institute, and I work with clients, but also I really love Bravo. And I also have been watching Bravo since I was a kid. It all started with my obsession with True Hollywood Stories, which as a child I had insomnia, still do. Please don't send me your tips if it includes melatonin. I've already tried it. And as my as a child would wake up in the middle of the night, go downstairs in the middle of the night and watch True Hollywood Stories. And then as Bravo became big, I started watching The Real Housewives. And I've always loved reality TV. I think, well, actually, I want to ask you first, Meredith. Why do you think you've always loved reality TV?
I think that it's such an escape, which I know is kind of crazy with me saying that I started watching it when I was a little kid, but I think it was just an entrance into somebody else's life. So, for example, like I said, watching Girls Next Door, like that was so different than my quote unquote, normal suburban life. Um, and it just felt so exciting and something that was just so different than anything I had ever seen or heard of. And so I was just like obsessed with it. My mom and I would watch it. And then whenever Housewives came on, like the OC, OG of the OC, Vicky, like what an icon. And I was just so amazed with how these people live their lives and just the opulence and the luxury. And that is really, I think that that's stuck. That is why I like to try to live my life a little luxurious these days.
They got the wrong band. I
I
just am
know.
imagining Vicky screaming, "They got the wrong band!"
Iconic.
There's so many iconic moments of the Real Housewives, and I think we should talk about this at some time. And if you're listening to this, drop us your questions about like why reality TV and especially the Housewives, like why it's actually feminist TV. I have a lot of hot takes on that for another episode.
Yes. I love that. And so, speaking of like our love for reality TV, what kind of got us to this point is we are both sex coaches and we're in this realm. And so, Rachel and I, being friends and being Bravoholics, decided why not share our perspectives? Because I think that they're pretty interesting on what's going on. So, that is what we're doing today.
Yeah, do you want to dive into our topic then?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so where are you? Are you caught up on Vanderpump and the Valley?
I'm caught up on Vanderpump in the Valley. I've not watched the new Summer House yet.
Okay, same. I haven't
Okay,
either.
so Summer House I will probably watch after this and be texting you like crazy about it, but Vanderpump in the Valley I'm all caught up, and there is a lot to talk about.
There's so much going on right now. So, recapping like this current week, they were in Big Bear, and I don't know if that was actually their baby moon, Janet and Jason, or if that was just what production needed them to call it.
Yeah.
I would be a little salty if that was my baby moon, because I think that those are supposed to be relaxing.
Also, there's supposed to be just the two of you. I would
Right.
never, ever in a million years be inviting friends to my baby moon. I would be on a beach with my partner, drinking mocktails and doing all of the luxury. Like I want massages, facials, I and pool time, and I want not drama. And
Yeah,
but Janet loves the drama, which I
she
kind of
does.
love. She's great.
I love it. So, yeah, I mean, that's like bringing your friends, like inviting chaos on your honeymoon. Like, who wants that? Maybe
Janet.
there's a special kind of kink for it, though. Yeah.
There probably is a kink for it, right? Like a chaos kink. I mean, there absolutely is. It's just it's labeled different things, right? So
Yeah. Who
or
knows?
there's a lot we can talk into about that as we dive into the episode. There's a lot of ways to go with that. So a lot of what Meredith and I were talking about when we were talking about these episodes was like the prevalence of sexless or sexless and unhappy marriages that are we're being seen on the Valley and Vanderpump.
I think we see it a lot, I think, throughout reality TV. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been a trope, it's been a storyline for so many people. But I think right now, having it overlapped with both the Valley and Vanderpump happening and it impacting so many different people in different ways, I found it really interesting. And that's really what stood out for me. So, like, you have, um, Michelle and Jesse, right? So that ship has sailed. Like, they are long gone.
She
Um,
looks at him with so much hate. Like when she looks at him, she's driving fire into his face.
it's so bad, and it's over when she asks him for a brand new personality. That's
I don't
bad.
disagree with her though.
Yeah, I mean, but also, so like thinking back about how they started their relationship, like how she was saying, that it's just the longest one night stand or something. It's the longest. Was that what she was saying?
She did say that, and it made me kind of cringe because I'm like, oh my god, I dated someone that was also the longest one night stand. My ex, when we first met, we
Yeah.
had a one night stand, didn't leave his house for like a week, and then I, for an entire year after it, I only went home to like get clothing and come back, and we also ended pretty traumatically. So maybe having the longest one night stand is not a good thing.
Let's just go on the record and say that that's not the start to a healthy relationship. But how do you get stuck? Like, whenever you go from that mindset of being fuck buddies or just being, friends with benefits, and then moving along to, oh, we accidentally got married and have a child together, like, when does it go too far? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on there, do you think, with their relationship?
I
Why do
feel
you think that they let it get this far?
I think a lot of people get stuck because of age. I think a lot of people, when, so say you're like, you're spending a lot of time with someone, I'm guessing based on their relationship timeline, I think it's they were in their early 30s when they met. You're in your early 30s, you're kind of like, well, I need to settle down. All my friends are settling down. Or, and if you're someone that wants children, it's like, oh, I want to have a kid. This person, I think a lot of people do like, this person is fine or they're not that bad. And I have these milestones in life that I want to achieve, and they're here. I don't believe that it's that blatant in our mind. It's much more of like the lower internal programming around it. But I think that if they dug deeper, that would be the reality of it. And I've even seen that with friends in my life too, of them getting married, or also clients, or getting married, having kids with someone who might not be their dream partner, but they are like they're good enough and they want to do these life milestones. And when I see Jesse and Michelle, that's kind of what I picture might have happened for them.
Yeah. And you could tell, I mean, she probably just got caught up in that, and they have a child as a result of it. And I just wonder if they would be in the same circumstance, or if they would even be together still if they didn't have their child. What do you think about that?
I think that they would have been broken up by now if they didn't have their kid. What do you think?
Yeah.
I think, and the reason I think that is because Jesse mentioned on one of the interviews that he didn't want to get divorced because children should grow up with two parents. Which, as a educator and coach, that is the worst thing that you can do for your child. It is so much better for your child to grow up in a home where they're loved and they have parents that can coexist and that can give them really amazing care, even if that means that you're not living in the same house. And sometimes
Hmm.
that means ending a relationship before you get to the resentful part of it. A lot of times, kids are byproducts of messy divorces because people have stayed with the partner well past the expiration date and they just hate each other, versus ending it much sooner when you realize it's not working, and having a peaceful cohabitation or a peaceful coexistence with your partner, raising the child together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, whenever you wait too long, nobody benefits from, I mean, everybody
No,
loses out there.
absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the impact of kids on intimacy overall and
Mm.
how that changes the whole dynamic of your sex life. So, in the example of Jesse and Michelle, they started off like one night stand. They couldn't keep their hands off each other. They were fucking all the time. Everything was great. And then, now she totally has the ick from him. So, kind of walk the people that are listening to this through what happens in those relationships.
I think their relationship had a lot of problems from what we've seen. And
Yeah.
this is all my perspective, caveat it all. From what we've seen, I think the relationship had a lot of issues outside of having children or having a child. But I do think that having a child is the thing that made her realize specifically, oh, this is not the person I want to spend my life with. And I think a lot of women realize that when they're with male partners because they see the lack of equity and equality that men show up to in relationships when there's children involved. So many
Mhm.
relationships are completely unbalanced. And there's actually a new study that recently came out that said that the couples that have the best sex are actually the couples that have the most equity in their relationships. And that
Ooh.
goes for domestic and emotional labor, and I don't see her getting any equity from him, definitely not emotionally. And I'm not sure as far as household duties go if she gets equity. They don't really cover that. I would assume that she's not getting that only because he has a very big ego, and typically men with big egos don't have the capacity to be equal partners.
Mm. And in other news, Jackson Brittany.
I know. What do you think about Jackson Brittany?
I mean, it's similar but so different still, but I do think that they kind of had the same circumstance. I do think that there was a level of love that they had going into becoming parents that maybe Michelle and Jesse didn't have. I am only speaking upon what we've seen on TV and this edited, portrayed version of what we have available to us. But I do think that that they did have some kind of connection. I mean, I just randomly fell asleep the other night to this special of them going to Kentucky, or like Brittany takes Jax to Kentucky.
Peacock is pushing that so hard because every time I end a show and I fall asleep to it, I wake up and that is playing. And I've removed it from my queue 5 times. And Peacock is like, no, you're going to watch Jackson Brittany go to Kentucky.
They want it like subliminally in our brains.
Yeah. They're like, remember when they were good?
Yeah.
They're also like, she needs to make money now. So let's get
Yeah.
some clicks.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And also, like, they're really putting on the forefront the evolution of her accent as well.
Yeah. It's gotten stronger,
Yeah.
right?
Which is ironic. But yeah, that's a whole nother identity episode there, I think.
Do you think that Jesse and Michelle could have saved their relationship?
No. I think whenever you start a relationship on the basis, I mean, I think physical intimacy, that sexual connection definitely has a play in it, but when that's all you have, that can only take you so far. And I see this actually with some of my clients that they're coming to this revelation. I've actually worked with a client in the past where they were about to get married and she had prolonged that engagement because it's like, what are we beyond roommates and fuck buddies? And whenever you start a family on that kind of foundation, it's a cracky foundation as it is. I think it takes a lot of self awareness and desire to want better on both sides to make it work. And truthfully, I think she was so checked out. He had no self awareness. And I think that that was a combination for where they ended up ultimately.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm like a hopeful romantic. I love love and I truly believe that most people can make it work, and but I do believe that it takes both people willing to check their ego and both people willing to step into empathy for what the other person is feeling, and if you can't do that then you can't make it work. But if you can do that, and that's really deep like soul, like hard work to be angry and also empathize with your partner and understand their emotions. And I agree with you. I think that his ego is too big. Maybe it got dissolved when he did his medicine journey, but I don't know.
Medicine journey.
Medicine journey. I wasn't sure. I'm like, are we allowed to say that on a podcast? The I word, A word. Can we
I
say it?
think we can say whatever we want.
Okay, ayahuasca. When he does ayahuasca journey. Um, I don't want our first episode to get banned. We're just getting into it.
I know. We have such good things to say too.
And maybe that helped dissolve his ego, maybe not. We don't know as of this point in the show, and maybe
Yeah.
we won't really see it, but I agree with you. I think his ego is too big and you can tell that he has a really difficult time taking accountability, even just in his interaction with the men too. And it's like if
Yeah.
you have this much of a difficult time taking accountability with your male friends, it's 500 times worse with your wife. And the only way we can make relationships work is honestly taking accountability for our impact of actions.
Can we talk about poor Danny being taking all of this? Like,
Danny,
this angel must be protected at all
I
costs.
know, sweet baby Danny
I
and
know.
Nina. I love, is it Nia or Nina? I keep getting confused.
It's just Nia.
Nia, okay. They're so cute.
I know.
He's
And
also like a little like not the brightest crayon in the box with the Napoleon complex thing, and he's like he didn't know what it
oh,
meant.
and the way that he was really like, he said it with his whole chest. Like, he
Oh,
was
I know.
really confident.
And this is why it was fun having like a lawyer on the show in the mix with these guys who are like models and like have other not as traditionally intellectual based jobs. When Jason was like, that's not what that means. That's not what that means. And I was like, thank you, Jason. Thank you for being the lawyer of the show.
I think that Danny is like the producers definitely knew what they were doing with Danny and Nia. Like, they needed this kind of balance in the group. But Jason, like, I'm kind of proud of him.
That's what I wanted to ask you of what
Yeah.
did you think about him, and that's a perfect segue from accountability. Like what did you think about it when Janet was really overwhelmed with all of the cooking
Yeah.
and felt like she was doing everything and like was like I'm done. She goes to her bedroom and Jason
Yeah.
follows her. What did you think about that from like I'm going to say from a relational repair like perspective?
Yeah, I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for us to see how that can happen and how you can de-escalate your partner and bring repair to a situation. Now, regardless of what I think of Janet, I mean, yes, she's dramatic. She brings the drama. Um but I totally get it. I think if I were in her circumstance, I were hosting all these people and I was pregnant and cooking, like that would really piss me off. That would really upset me. So I totally get from that perspective where she was coming from and how he came back and they were able to show that moment of repair. And then that was juxtaposed up against Jackson Brittany
Oh,
and
I
how
know.
he was calling her out for being ill. And it was very obvious that she was not drunk.
No.
And regardless of, I mean, that was just what we saw with Jackson Brittany was the ugly side of the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's a lot of other things to unpack there and there's a lot of other things going on. But how fucked up is it to see that and to see how he just so openly called her out? I mean, that, like, you could tell that there's no mutual respect for each other on that level. And you could tell he's kind of checked out and done with it. Whereas I think that it may be too far for repair for them.
I think so because there's been so many breaks in their relationship
Yeah.
and cracks that like they've not really tended to. She's just kind of from what we've seen, she's just kind of forgiven him and like they've moved forward, but there hasn't been actual like repair attempts or like deep changes in behavior, I think. But when I was watching that, I kept thinking that Jax, the way he is speaking right now, is the perfect example of relational projection.
Yeah.
Like he said multiple times, I've had 2 bottles of tequila today. You are projecting your alcoholism onto your wife, and you are upset with your own decisions, and you don't want to take accountability for them. So you're going to project it onto your wife and say she's sick because she's been drinking too much instead of going in there and being like, baby, what can I get you? I'm so sorry that you're sick. Let's get a doctor's appointment because this isn't like, I don't want you to feel this way. And I know you
Yeah.
feel this way a lot. Also, from a somatic perspective, again, just my opinion, I'm like, Brittany's sick because she's married to Jax. Like, that's why she's sick
Yeah.
all the time. You're sick because you're married to a monster.
Yeah, and we could talk, I mean, till the cows come home about physical manifestations of toxicity in your life, and that comes from relationships, that comes from your emotional well-being, your physical health, and how we store this in ourselves. I mean, it's going to be a long road of recovery for her to fully be recovered from this relationship, I think,
Yeah, I agree.
which I
The
hate.
I know I feel really I feel so much empathy and compassion for women that are in her shoes and like starting over when they've given men so many chances and believed in their potential and they've stayed by them, and now they get to this point where they're like, I can't believe in your potential anymore. And in her case, in Michelle's case, like they have kids. It's really heartbreaking watching these women do so much emotional labor and so much forgiveness and so much empathy and so much compassion, and to not have the partner meet them, and then they're finally just so exhausted, like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I've been pouring into you and I'm empty and I am dehydrated.
Yeah, seriously, it's so sad. So, I mean, I'm sure you've had people, clients come to you in the past that have been in a similar circumstance. How did you ultimately coach them? When do you get to a point that you say, this is it, it needs to be over? And
um
or when is there a point for repair? When can you see repair?
Let me answer the repair question first, then, because I think I want to use the example of Jason and Jax to like compare and contrast really quick. Jason walked in to Janet and he didn't justify his actions, which is the huge difference between them. He was like, I'm going to explain why I did this, but I'm not going to justify it. And that's a huge difference in repair. He came in and he was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were cooking all alone. I was having a really deep conversation with the men and it was like we were getting connected, etc. I didn't feel like I could walk away and I also was unaware of the time. I'm really sorry. That's an explanation, not a justification, which can
It's
help
huge.
your partner have empathy. And he's like, you are so right though. I should have gotten up. I should have come to help you. And like that was a beautiful example versus Jax when it comes to repair, and he has no availability for accountability, and he just walked in and is doubling down. She's like, I'm your wife. I'm sick. I need you. And he's like, you're drunk. And that's, he just continues to blame and deflect and gaslight her. And those two examples are like when I think that couples can't repair if one partner's ego is too big to let it go. It all goes down to ego, right? It's
Mhm.
uncomfortable to look at your partner and to say, you are right, I messed up. Or even if I don't think I messed up, I am going to recognize that the impact of my actions to you affected you and you are sad or you are upset. And I'm going to be responsible for the impact of my actions. That's uncomfortable. Our ego doesn't like
Yeah.
that. Our ego wants to be right. Our ego's like, I want to protect myself. I want to be right. And to when couples or people in relationships can drop their ego and both equally do it,
Yeah.
do you like this? Equally do it. Um,
It's a logic.
they when they can both do that, that's when relationships have availability for repair. And
Yeah.
when they have availability to move forward, when only one partner is doing it, that's when it becomes abuse. One partner that's giving empathy to the other person is taking advantage of that with Jackson Brittany, right? I don't know that we're seeing a lot of her specific empathy in this season, but we've seen it over the course of Vanderpump.
Yeah.
Um, and her continuing to like forgive him and say I understand and for etc for all his actions. And I've never seen Jax give Brittany that empathy back. And that's when relationships become abusive. One person is pouring into the other person and saying, I forgive you. I believe you. I'm sorry I did this. I want to understand you. And the other person is saying, I only want to understand myself and I don't
Yeah.
care about your experience. That's when relationships cannot be fixed. Both people have to be willing to metaphorically take the ayahuasca,
Yeah.
let their ego die, and be like, I'm really sorry. I did not mean to hurt you, but I take accountability that my impact and my intention are different. My intention was not to hurt you. 99% of the time, our intention is not to hurt our partner,
Right.
but maybe 50% of the time we accidentally do. And we need to take accountability for the impact that we have on our partner, just like Jason did.
And I think repetitive, doing this over and over and being the same circumstance over time just ultimately leads to burnout. And
100%.
burnout in the relationship, oftentimes the first symptom of that is not having sex, the loss of intimacy, the loss of sexual connection. And I think that that feeds a cycle of not having that intimacy leading to burnout, and that burnout leading to not wanting to have the intimacy, right? Because you don't crave sex that isn't fulfilling you in some aspect, whether it be, hopefully, it is physically, emotionally, mentally stimulating and fulfilling for everybody. That is in a perfect world where everything goes amazingly.
Yeah.
But hopefully, people come back to sex that is fulfilling on some level. And people crave that sex when it fulfills them and gives them some kind of relief and some kind of release, honestly. And that happens when you have a safe space, whenever you create intimacy, whenever you can have that trust, that respect. And that's not to say that you can't have amazingly fulfilling, wonderful one night stands or casual sex, but I think that there's some level of self awareness and understanding that you bring to the table that in long term relationships, your partner also meets that with. And we see it with, Jackson Brittany said that they haven't had sex in what, a year or twice in the past year or
I
something.
think it's something like twice in the past year, I think.
And Jesse and Michelle, she allegedly may or may not be looking for it from someone else. And then we look at what happened with, Tom and Ariana, and that kind of unfulfilling, and it ultimately is turns into a dead bedroom, where that's the first symptom of your relationship dying, as
Ooh,
morbid as that sounds.
ugh. It is morbid, but it's also the reality. And
Yeah,
we are here to talk about reality TV and the reality of sex and dating and relationships.
yeah.
What do you think about, or let me rephrase this. What are the most common situations you see people get into, or um, routines maybe couples adapt that lead to this dead bedroom, whether it's like emotionally or physical routines, or also just even communication routines that people get into?
Yeah, I think people tend to get stuck in their day to day, and you subconsciously move into the roommate phase of like, okay, we're depending on each other for our basic needs, you're going to do the grocery shopping and I'm going to do the cooking, or you're going to do the cleaning and I'll do the gardening, or what have you. And I think that people focus too much into that they let these intimacy go to the wayside. Now, I don't think that that's the case for all, end all be all, the end of all relationships. I think that there is room for repair there. I think that that's almost normal for the majority of the population. You get into this new relationship, you take on new roles, and you're figuring out as your intimacy ebbs and flows how you can change with that. I think that within that too, there becomes a discrepancy in desire, desire for the partner, desire for intimacy. And I think, largely speaking, in heterosexual relationships, women have more of a desire for that emotional connection and that kind of fulfillment that they need in order to have that physical intimacy. Whereas men in heterosexual relationships, for the most part, will come forward and say, well, I need that physical intimacy in order to build on top for emotional connectedness as
Yeah.
well. So I feel oftentimes when I have couples that have come to me in the past, that's been a huge theme that I have seen repeat itself over and over again. And that's very workable. That's very doable. There are treatments to this. And a lot of time it breaks down to connection. And are you having that connection that you need, that emotional intimacy before the physical intimacy with your partner? Are you having those hard conversations? And are you having those conversations outside of when you're about to have sex or you're about to have an intimate moment together? Because that's also, timing is everything with communication.
Yeah.
Bringing that in at the wrong time can make or break how that whole conversation goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Timing is huge when you're having these conversations. And to go back to your, like, the first part of your point of, you get into these routines, especially when you're living with someone or you're in a long-term relationship, you're maybe cohabitating or spending a ton of time together. You get into what I call, you both become household managers instead
Mm,
of partners. because there's a lot to do when you're running a household together. Who got the groceries? Who's getting the oil change? This bill's due. Are you picking the kids up or am I? And your relationship kind of becomes this household. You become basically like project managers of your life,
Yeah.
and you don't take time to continue to get to know each other like you would at this first start of dating, right?
Yeah.
And so, what I recommend to couples when they're going through this typically is you need to have a date night once a week, absolutely, or a date morning, whatever works. It can be a mini date if you don't have a ton of time or childcare. It can be 20 minutes, but it needs to be something intentional that you do every single week that you know you're showing up for, and you do not talk about anything related to household management. You're not talking about the oil change. You're
Yeah.
not talking about who's picking the kid up from soccer. You're not talking about going to your in laws. You're not talking about any of that. You're only talking about each other and knowing each other's inner world. That is it.
Yeah. And I think too, in a childless relationship, that seems so much more realistic to do. But I think it's way important, and I would argue even more so when you do have children, to keep up that equity in your relationship, both trying and making that attempt, that bid for connectedness whenever you are both dealing with children as well, because your whole role changes. And I think too, we see that with specifically Jackson Brittany. I mean, he's talked about on the very surface level how she's even talked about how her body has changed, right? She's not feeling into her body. She's not feeling wanted. She's not feeling sexy. And he views her now as his kid's mom. And so he doesn't have that bid for, like he was saying that they would have sex in, public bathrooms and hotel lobbies and all these crazy things. And I think that is also gone from their
Mhm.
relationship that he wanted, that he had previously. But now that's the mother of my child. Like I can't bend her over in a Lowe's bathroom,
Well, and
whatever.
that goes no, you're right though. That goes to like a another concept of that plays out in relationships of the Madonna whore complex, which is really common in heterosexual relationships. Typically happens after women give birth, and what happens is there's kind of this severance in the other partner's brain, and I say severance lightly, like it can be repaired, it's not broken. But there's a severance in the male partner's brain where they no longer can view their partner as the whore and the Madonna. They can only view them as the Madonna. So if you were having like crazy sex before having a kid and going on all of these fun vacations and doing all of this very energized, adventurous things, and then you watch your partner have a kid, you can't see them as both. You can't see them as that old person, the old partner that you knew, and also now the mother of your children. And that's a really common thing to happen in heterosexual relationships. It's not, your relationship's not broken, it's easily repairable, but it is a phenomenon that we see happen a lot. A lot of times when I work with couples who are experiencing infidelity and it's because the man stepped out, it typically has nothing to do with the fact that they do not love their wife or love their life. It so often has to do with the fact that like they cannot see their wife as a whole sexual being, and they have to compartmentalize, and they're like, you're now you're the Madonna, you're my wife, you're the caregiver of my children, I love you so much, and I love our life. I also don't think I can fuck you the way I used to, so I'm gonna find someone else to fuck because I can't do those things together. When I work with couples like after betrayal, infidelity, a lot of what I work with the female partner on, and I'm being really stereotypical talking about heterosexual relationships too, but when I work with a female partner on is like this this understanding, this empathy for their partner of like, this didn't have anything to do with you, it didn't have anything to do with why you're not giving or you're not being beautiful or you're not being sexually attractive. It has everything to do with the fact that your husband is compartmentalizing and cannot see you as a whole human. Like he
Yep.
cannot see you as a goddess, as a dominatrix, as a submissive, as a mother, as a plaything, as a slut, as his wife, as his partner. He can't see you in all of the capacities of who you are as a human.
And a lot of times what's kind of messed up about that is that you can't predict when that's going to happen, or you can't control if that happens. I
Mm-mm.
think, again, coming back to the level of self awareness, if you have an inch of self awareness to say, hey, I'm feeling differently about this relationship. Let's explore and be curious about it.
Yeah.
There's totally ways to get beyond this. I think it's more common than even people want to admit, especially, people who have just had children. They're like, this is
Yeah.
my wife, this is my partner, this is my person. And I think that that's way more common than we talk about, but there's definitely repair to that. And sometimes it just takes time. Sometimes it just takes adjusting. Sometimes it just takes sleep, probably for
Yeah.
new parents as well.
And a lot of times it takes like this is the toll of like patriarchy on relationships too. This aspect of patriarchy where w- women are seen as consumables,
Yeah.
right? And and women are seen as like you're this consumable object that I get for my pleasure. And it's like very deeply rooted. It's very subconscious. I think that there's very few men who this is like a conscious thing that they're going through, right? But it's deeply rooted inside of them from the systems at play. And even patriarchy affects women in the avenue of them adopting the Madonna whore complex. Because I've also worked with clients where it's not the male partner who is seeing them and saying, like, I can't have sex with you because you're the mother of my children. They're actually saying, like, I don't know how to have sex with you anymore because now I'm a mom. And they adopt this like belief of the Madonna whore complex, and it's all patriarchy like just manifesting, and it affects men and women really dramatically and drastically.
Yeah. You're so right with that.
Patriarch. Oh, also, everyone, if you just heard that big snore, I have an English bulldog named Dolly. You're probably going to hear her snoring in the background.
I
You might
love
also hear
that.
her drinking some water because she drinks really loud, and she's always with me because she's my Velcro dog,
Mm.
just
Speaking of
like yours.
drinking, what are you drinking today? What do you have as your beverage of choice?
I have an espresso martini. I live in Hawaii and it is 9 a.m. as we record this. I also have a poppy, which
Oh, I just discovered that flavor. It's so good.
it's so good, but every time I drink a poppy, I can't decide if it tastes like chemicals or it tastes good. I drink it and I'm like, does this taste bad or does it taste good? Let me have another sip. Does it
So
taste bad or does it taste good?
with that specific one, it's like the first taste is so intense, but the aftertaste is really good.
Yeah. What are you drinking in your Bravo
I
mug?
just I've worked with the homeless, I've worked with the toothless, Kathy Hilton mug. It's just tea. It's almost 2 o'clock in Denver. It's just tea. It's a
Um,
Friday. It's just the beginning to a long day. So
yeah. I didn't go to sleep early last night, woke up early for this, and then have a long day, but not of work things. So I was like, well, what sounds like a good way to start my day? An
I love
espresso
it.
martini because I need caffeine and also a little buzz will help me keep going.
Who doesn't love an upper and a downer at the same time?
Yeah, I also took my Adderall, so we're just like we're playing God's day.
I love
Let's
that. I
see how
love
we
the
can heal.
risks. The risk is worth the reward here.
Okay, we have not talked about Summer House yet. I really want
Yeah.
to hear. So, for background, everyone, I've watched Summer House since the beginning. Meredith has not watched Summer House until recently. So, I really want to hear your perspective on Carl and Lindsay as someone who doesn't have like the full picture of the background of their relationship.
Yeah, this is so interesting. So I jumped on the bandwagon.
Mhm.
Just like really I watched Vanderpump at the beginning, and then I took out a chunk and didn't watch, and then I watched, whenever Scandal was happening. Then I went back and watched. So I'm currently watching the current season. I just started maybe
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. It is very interesting. And this, I think, is a classic example of two friends, two people who are better as friends, but they mistake that for a romantic connection. I'm not saying that transition can't always happen, but I don't know. I think both of them want out. I think it's a silent fight though. Like I think ultimately Carl ends up being the one to, you know, put his stake in the ground,
Mhm.
but this silent back and forth, it's passive. It's intense. It makes other people, I mean, it's palpable to people around them. Like everybody else is understanding what's going on. Um, and it's really interesting to watch unfold because I'm like, girl, he doesn't really love you like that. You don't really love him like that.
Do you think just watching this season, are you team Lindsay or team Carl or a mix?
I'm
Because there's
team
nuance.
I'm team they need to they don't they're not good for each other. This may be a hot take, I don't know. I really haven't been like in the comment section about this. Kind of feel for Carl though. I feel like they both know that they've let this relationship kind of go too far, but I think she is sticking around and trying to make it happen for the sake of their wedding. That could be for a, personal reason. I think that that could be for a financial reason if they have some contracts of people covering their wedding. I don't know. Um, I don't know. I look at them, the chemistry is not there. It's almost giving like mom and son. It's giving I want power and control over you. And I think that they both are not good together for each other.
Yeah, I love hearing your insight as like someone newly watching it. I went into the season fully prepared to be Team Carl. I was like, I'm going to be Team Carl. Absolutely. Because Lindsay has always been someone who's really reactive and doesn't take
Yeah.
accountability. And those are just for me personally, those are big triggers
Yeah.
of, of reactivity, screaming, blaming other people, and not taking accountability. She's one of those people that says, I'm sorry that you felt that way and thinks it's
Yeah.
an apology. And so
Whew.
I went in being, and she's always like, well, I'm in therapy, and it's like, you need to fire your therapist because you need a new therapist, Lindsay. And that is my opinion.
Yeah. I think you're
But
onto something. Lindsay, out of this whole season, maybe her takeaway should be find a new therapist.
yeah, but so I went in fully prepared, but then I'm watching this unfold and I'm like, oh, I actually am with you, Mare. It's like I'm team just break up. Like you both,
Yeah.
because I see Carl being super passive aggressive and also manipulative in the way he communicates with her. And then she's really reactive. She's really doesn't take accountability. And they just are like going back and forth. But I also see Carl like using therapy language and as weapon, like as a weapon.
Yes.
And that really makes me mad.
I've noticed that too, and also using physical space as a weapon instead of
Yes.
having. There's something that is to be said about needing space. I mean, I even have that like in my own personal relationship where like my partner is big on I just need a few away, by
Yeah.
myself to come back to a connection or this resolution. Where I'm like, let's figure it out right now. Let's get it done with. Like, I don't want to sit with this uncomfortable feeling. But there is something to be said about space. Using that as a weapon against somebody else is also incredibly unhealthy. And I'm like, where do you think that this is going to help the end result?
Yeah. And do you mean space from the last episode too, where they didn't drive home together? Or space
So
from.
that, and
Okay.
also where he was like something like, I'm not going to sleep in the same room as you, knowing the consequences that that would bring forth.
I I think that that is one of the most like horrible things you can do in a relationship. Maybe this is my hot take is say I'm not going to sleep in the same bed with you because it's weaponized. It's like it's when we get in a fight, I'm going to punish you.
Yeah.
And I think it's really really it's not about taking space. You can take space and not punish your partner. And that's a big difference between saying, I need space. I'm going to go calm down for a minute before we have this conversation versus I'm going to punish you. I'm
Yeah.
not going to sleep next to you. I'm sleeping in the other room or I'm sleeping on the couch. That's saying, like, I'm punishing you. And those are two very different things.
Don't love that.
Yeah. What do you think, though?
I don't know. I think you're right on it. Like, I think that weaponizing that is definitely not a way to, that's not going to come from somebody who wants to work on resolution and wants to work on your relationship. So, I mean, of course, there's been little breadcrumbs that have led us, like hindsight's always 2020, right? But like watching this season, knowing the ultimate end result and seeing it, I think it's also really easy too to go back through everybody at the Valley and even Vanderpump going back and watching things unfold, knowing the end result, you're like, oh, how did they not see that? But I think also it becomes so normal and it becomes your day to day that sometimes you don't fully see it until you're on the other side, which I think is also really normal and want to talk about. Like people who maybe have had this in the past, like you shouldn't necessarily feel perhaps that something's that you should have known better. I think people can
Mm,
also cut themselves some slack and understand, where you are in a toxic environment in a toxic relationship. You're not fully thinking um, like you normally would, or you're not thinking logically or in a healthy way. And that's okay too. It's okay to look back and say,
mhm.
wow, I should have known, but not beating yourself up over it.
Are you following, this is a segue, but it's also pop culture, so I'm bringing it up. Are you following
Okay.
the FK Twigs? Is it FK Twigs? That's the singer that dated Shia LaBeouf.
What?
Are
Am
you
I
following
am I
this?
living under a rock?
Okay, so she just had an interview with Gayle King, and she came out with all of this abuse that Shia LaBeouf put her through,
No.
and it's like unsurprising too because many women have said this, and I think he has a lot of uh, probably trauma from being a child star, etc., that makes him really reactive and probably not a safe partner, allegedly, in all my perspective. um, and I but Gail King asked her, like, why didn't you leave? And she looked her in the eyes and she goes, I'm not answering that question anymore on behalf of all women. Like, that's not a question that I'm willing to answer. And that's not a question anyone should be asked,
Yes.
because it is breadcrumbing, and it's these small things that don't seem very big, right? And small things that on the outer perspective probably are normal relationship things, right?
Yeah.
We go through conflict, we don't agree, we don't want to sleep in the same bed some nights because we're mad. Those are normal emotional things that happen, right? But we minimize them because a lot of it is small relational things, but we don't want to see the person as the villain,
Yeah.
and we want to see them as a good person. And I really appreciate her saying, like, I'm not answering that question, I'm never going to answer that question again, and no woman should be asked that question, because we should never be asked, like, why didn't you leave? What's that doing? That's putting all the blame on you instead of the perpetrator of the violence. And typically when
Yes.
you're that deep into the relationship, you are having so much trouble unmasking of, like, what is real. In, like, these people are not monsters 24/7. If they were, we would have left, right? They're a monster sprinkled with a lot of angelic behavior.
Mhm.
And typically they're also a monster behind closed doors. So it makes us doubt our own reality,
I think that
etc.
that's I see a lot in what you're saying that I'm learning about this. I mean, I guess I just live under a rock, I guess. I didn't
You
know
have to watch the
that,
interview. I got
this
goosebumps. It was
was
so good.
yeah, I'll have to watch it. But I see this as you're saying this. I'm thinking about Ariana and how the ending of this season, and they wanted her to talk about it. They wanted her to talk to him, and I just feel so proud that she had this boundary and was like, I'm willing to risk this for my own mental wellness and for my own sake. Um, and I'm not giving him that satisfaction
No.
of asking me, coming together and having some kind of reconciliation. I love that because he did, mentally, he was very mentally abusive towards her. Um, and this
Oh, he
whole and
gaslit the shit out of her.
yeah. And regardless of what her own personal, mental wellness looks like, I know that he also tried to weaponize that. And we had, Sheena making it about her, talking to him
Oh
about
my god,
that.
Christina.
But he did try to weaponize that. And regardless of whatever she was going through, that's no excuse for that. That's not fair. And he was not good. He sucked.
No. And I think, like, adding on this layer too of getting out of abusive relationships when you're on a reality TV show, you have contracts. A lot of these people, like, they have not had formal employment
Yeah.
in their lives. And what do you do if you have to do this show because that's the way you make money? Or you have to do the show because, like, what else are you going to do? You're too much of a celebrity to, like, go work at a normal job and not be harassed. You're also
Yeah.
not enough of a celebrity to, like, go do movies or go do other things yet. So you're in this weird in between. And so I think I see that with Amanda and Kyle. I don't know if you've noticed
Ooh,
that, because I feel like a big reason of why she doesn't leave him is that the show, like, she gave up everything for him, her career for Loverboy, her career for the show, and she is like backing him and Loverboy 150%. And he's such a dick to her about it, especially in this last episode. It has another man that will not take accountability and just like deflects and justifies his behavior. But I think a big reason of why she won't leave him is honestly because they're on the show together. The relationship between Amanda and Kyle, I think a big reason of why she doesn't leave is because she doesn't know how to leave.
that's very common.
Mm-hmm. How do
And
you leave? Yeah.
unfortunately, I think it's a game of waiting on something, waiting on the ball to drop on one end, and that's really really sad.
And I think the thing is too is no one can tell you that you need to leave, that you have to decide it for yourself, right?
Yeah,
You In Summer House, a lot of the girls, women, told Amanda not to marry Kyle. There's a whole summer where they were all fighting and she was not friends with a lot of them, or like their friendships were fractured, I'll say, because they were all like, do not marry him. And I mean, same with Lindsay. A bunch of them are telling her, do not marry him, but and everyone told Brittany not to marry Jax. Like,
yeah,
there are so many instances where people tell you don't do this, but no one will believe it for themselves until they decide I'm ready.
yeah. I mean, and I don't know if you've seen Winter House. They were on
Yes.
Winter House. They filmed it in
Oh,
Steamboat, and
I
how
know.
she was like, I could be pregnant, and how that created, I would argue, kind of a wedge in their relationship. And I will just go on the record to say, is if you are questioning your relationship, bringing a baby in will not help at all.
So there's a lot of things about relationships I feel hesitant to say on social media and hesitant to even say on the podcast, because relationships have so much nuance, and what works for one person
Absolutely.
is like,
Yeah.
and I always have a big hesitation around making absolutes. That is a statement that I absolutely am 100% behind, though, and there is no nuance to it. A baby will not fix your marriage. A baby will
No,
not make you more connected. A
no.
baby will always, always, always cause a wedge between you and your partner that you have to work extra time to overcome.
If that is already there, I think a
Yeah.
child will enhance circumstances that already exist. So if you have a healthy foundation, then by all means, like, a child can enhance that healthy relationship. But if you already have fractures in your relationship, that's just going to magnify it and blow it up and not be good.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch Summer House after we talk and see this new episode.
Yes.
Um, Side note, I am swooning over Jesse Solomon. His smile, as soon as he smiles, I'm like, I'll kill my dog, whatever you want, like whatever you need.
What?
Yeah, like his smile melts me.
Unhinged.
I feel
Um,
like he could be a cult leader.
yeah. Yeah.
And he would just
Probably.
smile at people and they would do whatever he wants. His smile, just like, there's something about his smile that just makes you be like, I'll do whatever you want.
But why is he single?
Um, because he's a fuck boy.
Mm.
Which,
The
okay, I'm
old
gonna say,
the old razzle dazzle.
right. I'm using fuckboy lightly. When I look at him through like more of a coaching therapeutic lens, it's
He's a
because
lover boy.
he has a deep avoidant attachment that he needs to heal. And avoidant attachment comes from a place of being scared to attach to people. A lot of times when you see people that constantly are dating and never like settling down, it's because of avoidant attachment, and it's not because they're bad people. It's because they actually have a fear of attaching to people, because if they attach to someone they could be left. And
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense with his history of cancer and having this really real experience in his life of almost dying multiple times and having that potential life ending. The avoidant attachment is like, goes hand in hand with having
Whoa.
those type of
That's deep.
experiences.
That's deep. Like, you can't even be attached to your own life. Like, you
Right.
don't even, yeah, that's
Like, he
who.
couldn't be attached to his own life, and so he was scared to be attached to his own life. He had to learn how to not be attached to his own life so he could survive. Now he can't be attached to other people because his like avoidant attachment is very it's in full swing. And
Yeah.
he will either find someone who is avoidant as well, and he'll vibe off of it and they can come into a better, healthier relationship, or he'll go to therapy and work on his avoidant attachment and his fears around intimacy and loss and connection.
Wow. That's gonna fuck me up thinking about for the rest of the day.
You know what? I think it's Vanessa and Xander Marin. She's a sex therapist.
Yes,
He's her
love
husband.
them.
In their book Sex Talk, she says something about like the price to admission for intimacy is loss. And it's so true. Like, you want intimacy, you also have to be okay with loss, because it will happen. Even if you stay together forever, there will be moments of loss. There will be moments of disconnection. The price, the admission price for intimacy is being okay with loss.
Wow. What a nice little note to leave our listeners in with.
But I have a question for you before we go.
Okay.
What is your hot take of the week, Bravo related or non? And what's your ick of the
Yes.
week? The thing that's like, ugh, got you.
Okay, so I had this revelation while I was watching The Valley this week, and my hot take is Janet is gonna be the Valley's Lala. I think
Ooh.
that it's a slippery slope, and if she plays the cards right, she could use it to her advantage. Because last season, Lala, she had a moment. I think was it last season? Like I was like, oh okay, like almost
Yeah,
starting to feel for her,
totally.
and I think that this season it is not a good look on her. But I think Janet could play it to her advantage. I think that she could dish it out better than she can take it, and I think it could be good for her or it could be her downfall.
I think it'll be her downfall if she weaponizes motherhood in the way Lala does. Lala
Yes.
weaponizes motherhood and doesn't take accountability because she's like, "Well, I'm a mom and I'm protect," and it's like, "No, you've always acted this way. This isn't
Yeah.
about you being a mother."
Yeah.
I think if Janet weaponizes her role as a mother, then she will not be a fan favorite. If she does not do that, I think she will.
Hmm. I think yeah, it's all time will tell.
What's your ick of the week then? The thing that's like grossing you out?
My ick of the week, Bravo wise, I would say is how Jax treated Brittany. Like that really disgusted me, and I just think like I'm not surprised, but that was just so gross. Personal wise, sitting in traffic for no reason. Like, why are we sitting in traffic? It's 3 p.m. Um, yeah, I don't get that. That's really pissed me off this week.
Why don't we have fancy Euro or Japanese trains that go lightning speed by now?
Yeah,
We have the technology. Let's do it. You know,
yeah,
you and
we're
me just solving the
preoccupied.
world's problems.
Let's do it.
Okay, my hot take of the week is that Kyle. That's actually not a hot take. I'm going to take that back because everyone's going to agree that Kyle is manipulative with his tears. So my hot take is that Jason has a huge dick. And the reason I think Jason has a huge dick, and the reason I think about it every time I watch The Valley, is that Michelle, or sorry, not Michelle. Why did I say Janet? I'm getting their names confused right now. I'm so in the moment. Uh, or it's my 9 a.m. espresso martini hitting me. But Janet said that they're having missionary sex and it's great, and she's super pregnant. And from a like body movement perspective, in order to have missionary sex, if it's like I'm thinking like traditional missionary sex where someone's on top of the other person, typically the man, um you have to have a big penis to do that when there's a lot of things in between, like a big belly. And
Yeah,
so, like, I think Jason has a huge dick. I also really like Jason. I think he's really, really hot and sexy. So
I love this. I love this
that's my
hot
hot
take.
take. My
And
ick
what's your
of the
ick?
week, just men. Men.
Men.
The reason why, so I have a part-time job where I bartend, and last night I had men just like continually be creepy to me all night. And I was just like, I just want to exist and I just want to exist peacefully. It's okay if you like have some harmless flirting with me, but don't be a fucking creep.
Yeah,
I want peace. And I want peace. Just allow me to have peace.
yeah.
And so
That's
my
gross.
It was so gross. This guy came up and he was like asking ChatGPT if ChatGPT thought I was hot and describing me.
That's gross.
And
Like,
then
why
another
do they think that we owe them something?
and my my friend that I work with, he was like, "Well, why didn't you say something?" I'm like, "Because honestly, if I say something, I have to deal with the next repercussion of it. If I say something, I'm gonna have to then deal with their anger. They're either gonna like call me a see you next Tuesday or a bitch, or they're gonna tell me that I'm crazy, or I live in a small town in Hawaii too, or I'll see them and like everyone knows everything here. And the reason I don't just like tell them off, even though I'd love to, is because I don't have the energy to deal with the next phase of me telling them off, and so
Yeah.
I just try to ignore it because I'm tired, and that's my ick. My ick is that I'm tired because men make me exhausted.
Oof. Love that. And on that note,
We'll see you next Tuesday.
yeah. We'll see you next week. See you when you see ya. Thanks so much for listening in.